What is up everyone, Hero276 here, and welcome to today's video, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be checking out Bronzong in the Remix Cup. Bronzong is a Steel and Psychic type Pokemon. It has a variety of meta-relevant movesets, but today's moveset will feature Confusion, Heavy Slam, and Payback. Now, the one thing I really like about Bronzong is its ability to counter Annihilate with heavy confusion damage, as well as being able to counter potential Annihilate counters, such as Fairy types, Frost Slash, as well as any flying types as well, thanks to that Steel typing having that resistance. I originally wanted to feature Cacturn in this video, but Cacturn just did terribly. You'll see it maybe go off for maybe a battle or two, but the main feature of this video is going to be Bronzong. So, before we dive right into that, I just want to give a special shout out to my Spotify page. If you're enjoying the music used in this video and other videos, please consider checking out my Spotify page. You can buy my albums there for just $4.99, or you can follow the page completely free, and you'll still be able to access all of my music. That being said, let's jump right into today's video.
And we are starting today's video off with the lead Bronzong into Poliwrath. Now, Poliwrath usually does pretty well into most Steel types, but not Bronzong. Bronzong hits for massive damage here with these confusions. The opponent is so confused as well. They have no idea what to do except to stay in. This opponent only farms up to a couple of power-up punches. These moves are survivable. I'm going to switch into my own Poliwrath and look for the counter down and some residual energy. The opponent sends in Gligar, and I'm very glad I got that energy head start. I'm going to be able to outpace here to the Icy Wind, apply a debuff, and get a shield from my opponent. The opponent will be overfarming here. Very nice overfarm by the opponent. I will be shielding up this Aerial Ace because I can get to another Icy Wind and win the CMP tie. I don't think this is quite Icy Wind range yet, but my opponent still decides to shield. From here, I can let this move go through. This next Aerial Ace will not KO thanks to the double debuff. My opponent would get the farm down, so I'm actually going to switch into the Bronzong and combo play here with the Payback. Payback is going to barely not KO. They get off another charge move, but that's okay. This should only be the double debuffed Aerial Ace, and as you can see, it's not going to KO. My opponent sends in Frost Slash. They cannot get the farm down. I make it to the Payback. This will KO the Frost Slash, and we take the win. Another game, another lead. Bronzong into Poliwrath. This is a very good lead for us, and once again, the opponent is staying in. This Poliwrath is running Mud Shot, so that is very interesting to note. I will no-shield the first charge move. They end up going for the Icy Wind. I'm just going to stay in. My opponent appears to be completely core broken. They send in Shadow Golbat, and this is a terrible matchup for them. Wing attacks are resisted. Poison Fangs are double resisted. I would only need to watch out for a potential Shadow Ball. I'm able to get off 2 heavy slams. One of them forces a shield. Another one is barely not enough to KO. I will shield up because they did make the Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, it's only a bait. My opponent sends in a Charizard. Charizard has Dragon Breath, so it's not going to be able to farm down. They're forced to throw energy. Dragon Claw, not enough to KO the Bronzong, and we get off the Payback. Payback is going to barely not KO the Charizard. I send in Poliwrath looking for the counter down, but my opponent surrenders, and that is game, set, and match. Hopping into the next game, picking up a lead into Galvantula. I'm very happy to see this on the lead as it would do very well into my backline. My opponent pivots out of the matchup into a Politoed, and I get to send in Cacturn for the first time for this video. This is enough for the Ice Beam, so I will commit the shield. Unfortunately, just the Earthquake. I am going to overfarm and go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze here would KO the Politoed from this health range. They let the move go through, and now I have residual energy for whatever they decide to send in. They send in another Dragon Breath Charizard. Charizard here not going to like the boosted Dynamic Punch. That does insane damage, and we're able to get off another Dynamic Punch against the Charizard. This might pressure a shield from the opponent, and it does. I send a Poliwrath looking for the counter farm down. We get the farm down. My opponent surrenders, and that is game, set, and match. Hopping into game number 4, picking up a lead into Togedemaru. I do have two better responses, so I'm going to switch into the Poliwrath. My opponent switches out of the matchup into Gligar. I do win the CMP on the Icy Wind, and this is big. Their future moves now will be debuffed, and as well, I get a shield from the opponent. I will let the first Aerial Ace go through since it is survivable, and from here, they will outpace me to a second charge move, but that's totally fine. I see no reason why I should not be shielding up this charge move, because either I'm going to be able to force both shields with the next Icy Wind, or I'm going to be able to preserve alignment. So my opponent gives me both shields, and I'm perfectly okay with this. The only problem is Gligar leaves with a ton of energy, and Bronzong takes big damage here from the digs. Thankfully though, they are double debuffed, so dig, as you're going to see, not doing a ton of damage. I might even go for the Confusion Farm Down. I'm not able to get it. And this dig is going to start to get the Bronzong fairly low, but I don't really need the Bronzong. I could send in the Cacturn, look for the Farm Down, and I'm able to get it. Back in comes the Togedemaru, and I'm going to make a pretty big mistake. I no-shield here when I should be shielding in this matchup, because Wild Charge does a ton of damage to the very glassy Cacturn. They have Dunsparce in the back, so this was a completely winnable game had I shielded the Cacturn, but because I didn't shield, my Cacturn gets Rock Throwed Farm Down, and now I have to rely on Bronzong to have enough energy, but it's just not going to. I'm going to get Thunder Shocked Farm Down, and I lose the game. Looking to get back on the right track in the next match, picking up a lead into Empoleon. I will switch into my Poliwrath, and I lure out a Cresselia. Cresselia here would struggle immensely up against the Bronzong, so I'd like to have that aligned to it at some point. I throw the Scald, I'm able to grab a shield and get a debuff, which is very nice. That means I can very comfortably tank the Grass Knot. As well, my opponent is going to lose CMP on the next Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to force the second shield from my opponent. I have no idea why they just did that, but either way, I'm very happy with two shields here. My opponent is now double debuffed, and they're in a terrible matchup up against my Bronzong. Everything that they can throw is resisted. They go for the Grass Knot, that does absolutely nothing. From here, they try to catch onto Empoleon, but I send in Cacturn. Cacturn will be shielding up the potential Trail Peck. Opponent goes for the Hydro Cannon. I'm going to try for the Farm Down here. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it, so I end up throwing the Trailblaze, and this is to boost my attack for anything else that decides to come in. The opponent sends in an Alola Ninetales, they get the Powder Snow Farm Down, but this is just a sweep show here for the Bronzong. Gonna throw the Heavy Slam, this is double super effective, it will one-shot the Alola Ninetales. Back in comes Cresselia, but everything they throw here is resisted. I don't need to respect this damage. Grass Knot does absolutely nothing, even if it's not debuffed. That is tanked very well by the Bronzong. Payback will pick up the knockout, and we take the win. Hopping into game number 6, picking up an interesting lead into Frostlass. Frostlass has one-shot potential here with the Shadow Ball, but everything else is resisted. I'm going to farm up, go for the Shadow Ball catch onto Cacturn. I do not get it. My opponent is going to throw their energy. I will commit the shield here. Avalanche would hit for big damage. I decide to overfarm and play to the CMP tie, faking a Dark Pulse, but I'm actually going to go for the Trailblaze. Opponent commits the shield, and at this point, I am perfectly fine as long as I have at least one shield down. From here, I will send back in the Bronzong. Bronzong should be able to do okay now that Frostlass is in this health range. All I need to do is mind the potential Shadow Ball. The opponent now switches out into a Gardevoir, and this is not a good matchup for the Gardevoir. Everything here that they can throw except for a potential Shadow Ball is resisted. They end up sacrificing it as I go for the Heavy Slam. Opponent will be sending in an Empoleon, and now I get to send in the Poliwrath, and as well, my opponent already used their switch timer, so they're switch locked in here. Opponent will be throwing the Drill Peck. I can survive that and get the counter down as well, leaving with energy for the Frostlass. I decide to go for the Icy Wind bait. My opponent does commit the shield. I wanted to at least guarantee the debuff, but that shouldn't really matter in the end because I have the Heavy Slam banked, so all I need to do is shield up this potential Shadow Ball. They end up baiting with the Avalanche, but that's okay because I clicked the Heavy Slam, and this will KO the Frostlass and give us the win. One final battle today leading into a Greninja. This is absolutely terrible for us because they resist everything we can throw. So I send in the Poliwrath. My opponent sends in a Golbat. So right now we are hard countered on the lead and the switch. Gonna go for the Icy Wind. That grabs the shield from my opponent, so I'm just gonna take shield advantage here in this matchup. They will go for Poison Fang. It's not gonna do a ton of damage. I should be able to make one more Icy Wind as well, and this will do some very solid damage onto the Golbat if they decide to let it go through, which they do. My opponent is gonna have to throw even more energy to get the knockout, so they're gonna throw a Poison Fang. I still don't think this KOs. It doesn't. They get one more wing attack through, but I can send in Bronzong here and get the full Confusion farm down. Opponent sends back in the Greninja, and I do get the catch of the Night Slash onto my Cacturne. Cacturne actually absorbs that pretty nicely, but then my opponent sends in Alolan Marowak, and I'm in trouble. The rest of my team takes super effective damage from fire, but I'm gonna fake a Dark Pulse here, and I grab the shield. So that's pretty big here, because if I get 2 correct shield calls, I'll be able to knock out with the payback. I shield, it's the Shadow Bone, and that's a really good shield. Opponent gets to another charge move. I'm gonna let this one go through. Opponent only goes for the Bone Club. That does not do a lot of damage. I overfarm until I can't anymore, and I go for the payback. Payback is going to pick up the knockout onto the Alolan Marowak. Opponent will send back in the Greninja. They make it to a Night Slash. I will be shielding this one up. The big question is, can I make it to another payback? I do get to the payback, outpacing the Greninja by 1 turn. Payback will pick up the knockout from this range, and we beat the hard counter team. In a meta where Annihilate and Poliwrath are extremely common, and a meta where their counters are very common, Bronzong, handling both Annihilate, Poliwrath, and their respective counters, is very valuable in this meta. It is certainly a unique core breaker, and there are a lot of instances where it can be used. There are times, however, where Bronzong feels a little clunky because of Confusion's slow move animation, as well as its expensive charge moves, but otherwise it's a very solid all-around Pokemon, and a very cool core breaker. Anyways, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.